This week on Strip Pile Naked, we've got Tradd Moore back for another part of his Creators Edition episodes. This time we're looking at Luther Strode, written by Justin Jordan and colours by Felipe Sobreiro.
Yeah, because this is a page where you can't... I don't know how you would film this, say, for example. I don't know how you would turn this into a different medium. Was this like a page where Justin kind of sent you something going, let's not put panels in it? Or is it like, just do whatever you want to do on this page? How did this come about?
Justin scripted this, same as he, as if he was writing any other comic. It's just, with this series, I just had it in my head to kind of challenge myself to do something distinct with each issue. They're going to like all these different environments. There's first issue, there's a fight in a city. Second issue, there's a fight in like a snowy Russian forest. Third, it's this like neon lit Hong Kong. And then this one, they're in this big open desert. You know what I mean? So it just gave me a lot of room to try out a lot of different visual stuff, and I wanted to take advantage of that. I mean, I know that's always exciting, when you're watching or reading something, whenever you get to enter into a new environment, whether you reach a new level on a video game, or whether in, Star Wars or whatever, they go to a new planet and you're like, oh, what's this going to be about? So yeah, with this one, I also like to put certain like constraints on myself for an issue to see if I can work within these constraints. So this one, even though within each page I have more or less like just dropped all panels and panel borders, I never go full bleed on the page in the issue. They are all within a frame, which I really liked doing because it made each page kind of like a little piece of artwork on its own. And at the time, I was really inspired by, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, Sergio Topi. Topi. He's amazing, and he pretty much very similar to this. He just didn't really mess with those very often. You know what I mean? He just kind of drew what he drew on the page, and I think that for the type of stories he told, it was really awesome, and made every single page something that you could really just like, you could look at it outside of context, and it just looked like some amazing collage type drawing, but it works also in the context of the comics. So yeah, I was super inspired by that, and I was also really inspired by, as we were talking about earlier, I like putting multiple versions or multiple characters of the same character moving through a page, and I had started messing around with that, and Felipe Sobreiro, the colorist of Luther Strode, it reminded him of this Italian comic artist Gianni De Luca. And yeah, if you look at his stuff, then he had basically just made comics of a bunch of Shakespeare, and he did something similar where most of the pages in the book are just full page splashes, and you follow basically like 5 to 20 drawings of one character moving through the space. So I thought that was really cool, and it was something that I wanted to mess with because his stuff on Hamlet, it's like some of my favorite comic stuff I've ever seen. So that was the idea there, was just to try something different and to give a different dynamic to it. They're in the desert and it's all super flowy and open, and I wanted to do the same thing with panels and with they're all wearing like flowing clothing, you know what I mean? I thought that would be cool to put them in clothing that was similar to the environment. So basically everything was designed to give this kind of a whimsical nature to it.
I've just Googled Gianni De Luca.
Yeah.
And that is awesome.
Yeah.
That's so
incredible.
cool.
Yeah, and it's like I can't find that much work of his.
Did you see this before? Well, because when was Ghost Rider was what, 2014?
No, and that's the thing. It was basically earlier on. I had done Ghost Rider where I was playing around with the multiple character thing when I would show him transform. And earlier on in Luther Strode, I was doing some of the action sequences where I'd draw multiple versions. But it was because of that Felipe was like, oh, you got to check this guy out. And then I read some of his work, and then this issue was post seeing his artwork, and you can definitely see the very clear like A to B influence there. And I can't even the copy of the book that I have isn't in English, and I can't read it, but I've looked through it a ton, and yeah, it's just awesome.
I can't believe I've never heard of him before. This is
I
amazing.
know, that's how I felt, because I can't find much work of his. I don't know how much work he did in comics or just in general, but I know that he was, I guess, an artist in the 70s and crazy good.
Well, this is like everything is the same thing, where it's just huge splashes and double splashes, and just people walking around with loads of.
All one environment, you know, and it basically is to me the most like A to B transition, you know, from stage play to comic. You know what I mean? Like it really takes the spirit of that and makes it work in a very unique, only comic way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of where you go like, oh wow, that is kind of like watching this character walk onto the stage and act their way across it. So yeah, basically you take that work of DeLuca and then you mix it with Topi's stuff, and that was what I wanted to do with these pages in this issue.
You can really see that, yeah. You can really see that influence. Yeah. That's really cool.
Well, and also, yeah, I forgot there was also, this one is weird. Like this one, a lot of the issues in The Legacy of Luther Strode had very strong specific influences, and there's this video game called Journey, and the character designs and the sandy environment was very inspired by that as well. So yeah, like it was just kind of like a mishmash of a lot of things that interested me, and I was like, well, I can if I can somehow put this all in a blender and make it come out to where it seems like still uniquely mine, as well as not like straight up thievery, you know.
You know, the reasoning behind it, presumably, again, for this idea of it kind of being a bit more free-flowing, is Delilah is doing some kind of mind trickery, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's not even just so much of a influence from someone else. There is actually like a storytelling reason for it to be presented like this.
Right. I like when people think of clever ways to show off characters' powers, you know? And Delilah, she can like warp people's minds and alter their perspectives, and, you know, kind of like a trickster type power set. And so earlier in the comic, whenever she would use her trickery powers, I would warp the panels and bend them. Later on in this issue, you see it happening a lot. Whenever she'll use her powers, the panel will kind of like fold up like a piece of paper, you know, like as if the comic is falling in on itself, and she's kind of like exiting it. You know, this issue focuses on her. She kind of like monologues and goes back into her childhood and tells her story. I thought it'd be interesting, you know, since her whole power set from the get-go was shown to be this like flowing, you know, warp the visual perspective type power set, that to do the whole issue like that just made sense.
Well, just so when Justin scripted this was literally scripted like panel 1, 2, 3, etc.
Right. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So like, for example, on the, you know, looking at the page here where Delilah and Petra are arguing, each part with a dialogue bubble was written as panel 1, you know. Delilah looks at Petra and says, do you know how old I am? You know, panel 2, blah, blah, blah. And I just took the paneling and got rid of the borders.
That is genius. That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. You know, you mentioned that you kept it all within, so it wasn't a bleed page.
Right.
Was that just the way it just logically made sense to make sure it was like, it still felt like a moment?
Yeah, and also I just really liked the look of it. You just get so much influence coming in at all times because you're just always watching stuff and reading comics and whatnot. And I was flipping through the Incal, Mobius's thing. And for the first large portion of that book, you know, every page has a border. There's no like full bleed.
Yeah.
But in the kind of like back bit of the book, the, I guess, last couple volumes, it's like pretty much all full bleeds. I just like the first half better visually. And I thought like, okay, so, you know, sometimes I guess I found myself thinking that I had to use full bleeds to get to evoke certain things. And I wanted to see if I could forego that element and still make a striking, cool visual comic. So yeah, that was my idea there. And I think what happens is in the final page of the issue is a double page spread. I went full bleed on that one. So I thought that was a time where I could be like, okay, I stuck to this rule for a while. I'm breaking it here so that you don't think that the rest of the whole series is going to be like that.
And so why did you decide to include 2 actual like panels in there? Right. So why did you decide to put those in?
That was another thing. I know that with the Incal, if I'm even pronouncing that right, I'd probably mispronounce everything. Incal, whatever. Because Mobius was drawing those, you know, wasn't like, I don't think he was doing that consecutively. I don't think he did one issue after the other. I think that was spread out over a number of years and then compiled together. Like I said, there's like a distinct part where he starts doing paneling different. And I'm sure that was probably just years later and he didn't feel like doing it that way anymore, which makes complete sense, you know. But as a reader, it does make for almost like a jarring transition, because you go like, oh, I was used to this type of thing and now it changed. And I didn't want that to happen in this issue or when the series is compiled, or I mean, it is now, but in the trade paperback, because you have to design things knowing that eventually this is all going to be put in a trade paperback. So I didn't want it to all of a sudden hit 22 pages of this comic where there's just no panels. And I knew that the last couple pages of this issue were going to go back to traditional paneling, so I wanted to slowly introduce them back in, because it's like the first 3 pages there's no traditional panel borders, it's all free flowing, and then for the following couple pages I'll just put like 1 in there, and then following page I put 2 or 3, and then before you know it, it's back to traditional paneling. In the same way that the whole idea of this issue was to create a seamless flowing visual, felt like that was important to have the reader not be jarred by the transition in storytelling.
Which wraps up this episode of Tradmore's Creators Edition. He'll be back in 2 weeks with an episode looking at his work on Zero with Ales Kot. Thanks for watching. If you're a fan of Strip Panel Naked, we'd love it if you check out our Patreon, where you can support to get access to tons and tons of extra content, including longer talks with Tradmore. For more comics talk and analysis, you can follow me on Twitter @HassanOE, and finally hit subscribe to keep up to date with all the latest episodes, and we'll see you next time.